now have Olivia Enos. She's a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. Olivia, thank you for making time to be with us. As noted, China's surveillance, its regulation, and crackdown on churches is not new. But what prompted this round of arrests? Why now?
That's a great question. As we know, this is the largest crackdown on a single unregistered house church in China in over 40 years. As you mentioned, Pastor Ezra Jin, along with 30 other pastors and associates of Zion Church, one of the largest churches throughout China, they have all been detained or disappeared. This is really something that we have to watch. And as you mentioned earlier, this is not happening in a vacuum. This is happening amidst an ongoing trade war between the US and China. We just saw China acting out by saying we're going to put an export ban on rare earth minerals, something that they walked back after President Trump said this is unacceptable. But in the midst of all of those ongoing negotiations, President Trump also mentioned that the anticipated meeting that's coming up in South Korea amidst APEC between President Trump and Xi Jinping, that this could actually be called off over the rare earth minerals dispute that the CCP has sparked. All of this happened within days. Pastor Jin and other folks at Zion Church were arrested. And so I think we have to keep all of that in mind. And if I were President Trump, I would condition my future meeting with Xi on the sidelines of APEC on the release of Pastor Jin and other high priority political prisoners like him.
You know, you moderated a discussion about the Chinese Communist Party back at the Hudson Institute in September, calling on the United States to do more to secure the release of nearly 2 million Uyghurs, in addition to 1,000 political prisoners in Hong Kong, as well as Tibetans and Christians currently being detained. Why does the Chinese government view these groups with such suspicion and hostility?
Well, the Chinese Communist Party views anyone who respects and honors an authority above the party as a threat to the party's power. So the CCP has undertaken policies of sinicization, which is simply a fancy word of saying we're going to try to secularize all religion so that any sort of religious practice is subservient to the goals and aims of the Chinese Communist Party. But the CCP goes beyond just this sort of secularization of religion and extends it to say any person who is religious is extremist and a threat. And so they use these faulty justifications as a reason for why they can engage in crackdowns like the one that they're carrying out against Pastor Jin, or the one that they are carrying out against the Uyghur people, which, as you mentioned, there were at one point at least 1.8 million Uyghurs held in political re-education camps. And I think the most essential thing to bear in mind is that if the CCP views human rights violations as an essential tool to maintaining their grip on power, the US government needs to have a robust defense of human rights and a robust apparatus to press for the release of political prisoners and to safeguard and defend religious freedom and other freedoms of folks across China facing persecution and the ire of the CCP.
Yeah, and you did mention that President Trump should stress that on a sideline conversation with Xi at the APEC meeting at the end of the month. We just have a minute left, but I want to ask you, according to International Christian Concern, it puts the number of Chinese Christians between 85 to 128 million people. Can you remind our viewers of what it's like for Christians in China, why so many have joined the underground church rather than a state-sanctioned or state-sponsored church?
Yes, I think that, a Christian recognizes that if their faith has to be subservient to a government, it isn't really practicing faith. And so the reason why you have so many unregistered churches is because people want to be able to worship God. They want to be able to worship Jesus Christ and to recognize that he is seated on the throne, not Xi Jinping. And so you have so many unregistered churches and incredibly brave individuals like Ezra Jin who were willing to speak out, were willing to share the gospel, were willing to create a safe space for Christians. In fact, his weekly prayer meetings attracted over 10,000 individuals every
Wow.
single week. So we need to be joining in prayer for those individuals who are likely to face more persecution.
Right.
I suspect this is only the beginning.
Well, very important. We're grateful that you're here to help highlight the issue. Olivia Enos with the Hudson Institute, thank you so much for being with us this evening.